The Bernan family, Hirsch, 37, his wife, Bracha, 34, and their 3 boys, Sholem, 8, Kazrael, 6, and Samuel, 4, were one of many Jewish families that lived in Vilnius. Home to about 250,000 Jews before the Holocaust, Vilnius was one of the greatest centers of Jewish theology, philosophy, and learning then known to the world. But with the occupation by the Germans in 1941, that rich culture and the Jews who created it would be the target of a campaign of annihilation, one that included the Bernan family. Hirsch was sent to a labor camp to work on a railroad. As soon as the railroad was completed, he was murdered in the Ponary Forest, the infamous site where the killing of 70,000 Jews would eventually take place. Brocha, an enterprising woman, bribed a guard and left Vilnius with her 3 children. She and the boys wandered for some time between villages until they were apprehended by a police officer. The officer ordered Brocha and the children to enter the nearby forest.
Я помню, как сегодня, такая, будто такая, как его назвать. Сказали, возьмите он лопату на мать и давайте идите.
While waiting, the officer shot at a bird flying overhead. Kazrael began to cry. The grave completed, Brocha held her 3 sons close to her and waited. Then, in a twist of fate, the officer pointed his gun toward the sky and shot the bullets into the air. Brocha and the children remained in the forest trying their best to survive. While Brocha and her eldest son Sholem went out to search for food, Kazrael and Samuel would fend for themselves, sometimes for days. Leaving the forest, Brocha made the fateful decision to give her children over to the care of others. Kazrael was taken in by a woman named Polina Tarasevich. Samuel went to live with another family, while Brocha and Sholem hid together with a family in Parodomino. In spite of Brocha's efforts, 3 people would be executed in short order. Polina Tarasevich, for her actions in harboring Kazrael, and Brocha and her eldest son Sholem, murdered by German collaborators after being informed by neighbors of their location. Kazrael, at the age of 8, was left to fend for himself after the murder of his protector, and Samuel, abandoned when the payments made by Brocha stopped, was left alone at the tender age of 6 to survive as best he could. Samuel wandered for some time, eventually spying a house, a beacon of hope for living another day. Malnourished, sick, and cold, Samuel crawled onto the porch and hid behind the bench where he was soon discovered by the owner, Mr. Koszczyc. Deciding that he simply could not take the enormous risk of hiding a little boy, especially one who spoke only Yiddish, Mr. Koszczyc asked his sister, Monika Koszcyzc, and her husband Ludwik to take the boy in. In spite of the grave danger, Ludwik and Monika decided to open their home to Samuel. Ludwik and Monika hitched their horse and buggy and traveled to the Koszczyc home to pick up Samuel. Samuel climbed into the buggy and hid beneath a pile of hay. On the way home, danger mounted as Ludwik and Monika approached a German checkpoint, their hearts pounding heavily. An officer approached the wagon and peered inside. Then he lifted a pitchfork and stabbed the pile of hay in search of stowaways. It was a close call, but miraculously, Samuel was not found. Once home, Ludwik and Monika hid Samuel behind the stove, where he would stay all day.
They must have been such a good people that I really believe that they didn't even think. And they didn't weigh it like I would be weighing it right now. They just did it because that was what they needed to do. That was right, the right thing to do.
They didn't think twice. They just did what was right. And they knew that they needed to save this little boy.
With the end of the war in 1945, happier times were ushered in for Samuel. Samuel's brother Kazrael, who had changed his name to Anatoly Kaczynski, had settled in Perodimino. There he came to know a musician who made an important discovery.
Я нашел твоего брата, очень похож на тебя. И это будет точно твой брат. Он еврей. И я тебе его обязательно покажу и отвезу.
It was not long afterward that the two brothers, who had not seen each other for years, joyfully reunited. At the age of 18, Samuel, who was then known as Misha, moved to Klaipėda to attend the Marine Academy there. In August of 1965, Misha married Emma Bernstein and had 2 sons, Igor and Ilya, and 4 grandsons. Ludwik and Monika Koszcyzc lived out their days in Gdansk, Poland, both passing away barely a year apart of each other. Their legacy of love and compassion for others and the courage to act on their principles lived on in the lives of their 4 children, all of whom are now deceased: Stanisława, Maria, Janina, and Henrik, and today endures in the lives of their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren.
The value of my grandparents, I want to pass it to my grandchildren.
Just unbelievable what they did and what they risked.
They just did it because they believed it was the right thing to do. And because of that, so many other generations and so many other families are here to prosper, and we can all remember together. And it's something that it's our job and it's our duty to pass that along.
For years, up until Misha's death in 2007, the Koszczyc family and Misha remained close.
В общем-то, нет большой благодарность. Благодаря им мы сейчас на связи, мы живы, это только благодаря им мы находимся. И это святая память, и все, что возможно, эта память останется в наших сердцах, в сердцах наших детей.
Today, Misha's family is filled with gratitude for the heroic and selfless actions of righteous among the nations Ludwik and Monika Koszcyzc.